토마르저去年吧 대회사 강 점나냐 그런 송주산제 지선바의 생존 내용 내전부 연성을
Before we engage in any forms of the Dharma practice, whether it is listening to the teachings or one is engaging in virtuous actions, it is very important for us to start by the development of Bodhicitta, which is very important. So the reason why it is so important for us to generate the sense of bodhicitta, it is said by Shantideva, the virtuous actions without proper motivation is like the water tree. Everything will be exhausted once the fruit was generated. So the virtuous actions with the proper motivation, proper bodhicitta, the result of this practice will be increased, will not be emptied until we attain enlightenment. It is to say that actually when we engage in the practice of any forms of practices, it is necessary for us to engage or to generate bodhicitta. If it is not the case, then whatever merits we may accumulate through this practice, the result will be there, but the result will be there only once. It is like a water tree. Once the tree produces some sort of fruit, this fruit will be consumed once, and then the tree itself dries out. So if we engage in the Dharma practice with the proper motivation, this will be like an excellent tree. This will generate, this will produce the branches and fruit and more, which increases. More we use this, means that actually the accumulation of merits through this kind of practice will remain within ourselves until we reach enlightenment. So in order to have this correct motivation, or what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to think about it, is that we have to realize that all sentient beings, as vast as the space, that all of these beings going through a lot of sufferings. So that all of these beings have been, from beginningless time, our fathers and mothers, they have been very kind to us. So these beings I should liberate to the state of Buddhahood. That is the aspiration Bodhicitta. So not only that, also we need to engage in the practice. So then one has to remind oneself that we should listen to the Holy Dharma and we should engage in the virtuous practice. So once you have this kind of attitude, before we engage in any forms of practice, then we have generated the proper, genuine bodhicitta. So after correcting our motivation in this particular direction, so now which is going to proceed with the actual teachings as for this session. So the very essence of the subject of this teaching will be the teachings and practices were practiced by our forefathers, great practitioners, according to Karma Council tradition. So the subject will be the 5 points of Mahamudra. So it is said by one of our great Devachenprayer master, Gutenstein, it is very important for us to engage in the practice of the Bodhicitta. Along with the practice of the preliminary, it will be like riding on a great horse in order to reach the destination. This is the quotation which is translated in a very brief way. So this quotation basically says that whenever we enter into the practice of the Dharma, whenever we enter any forms of Dharma practices, it is so important for us to start by the practice as known as the Ngondro, the preliminaries. So the first part of the Mahamudra point is the Ngondro, the preliminary practice. So in terms of the preliminary practices, it has 2 parts, the ordinary preliminary practices and the extraordinary preliminary practices. So then in terms of the ordinary preliminary practices, which involves the practices as known as the 4 basically mind turning away from the samsara, and this is started by the reflecting or perhaps engaging in the reflecting on the understanding of the precious human body. This is the first one. The second one is the impermanence, then the cause and effect, the karma, and then the disadvantages of samsara.
And Tamunga Mundro Jala, the Sono Matana, Tangarons, and Tambu, there's Chuya for the Yoni Gurundo, Sona Yam, then Chutella, then Jutan and Matapa. Taga, Drugu, Samba Tangi, Mato, Yang Tabaki, Duptur Mundua, Timatapa, the Juti, then Tamunga Mundro Jala, Sono Matama, Tani.
So this particular practice, as known as the 4 ordinary preliminaries, is that if one doesn't reflect on the meaning of these 4 points, sometimes what happens is that even if we have a great wish to engage in the practice only by thinking, but we are not really able to engage in the practice. This is simply the reason. Actually, this is the reason why we are not able to engage in the practice, is that we are not able to reflect on the meanings of the 4 preliminaries. So because of that, we don't have the ability to practice the Dharma, there is no diligence, and only by thinking will not do any good. So because of that reason, it is so important for us to reflect on the meanings of the four ordinary preliminaries.
Ati tumungan doja tambo tanjur nyeba kawa. Ta tanjur nyeba kawa tu tatangarong so lute pason soba. Sendene jo ni kawa ji yen songwa. Jawe se po kawa le. Tanjur dana sendene nyeba ka jiwe tendo topar churba. Kate ta pemba madru na sine yong tanjur wa kala jur songyo. Tatangarong 단주 양타바시 도주 뒤에 까불라 되는 대에서 양타바시 접그래 뒤에 까불라 양타바 마름네 예로당 방에 개모나 메신저나 몸바라 단주 된다와 토르 말에 되는 송안에.
So out of the four preliminary practices, first one is the obtaining of this precious human body, which is very difficult to obtain this kind of perfect conditioned body. So it is not that easy to obtain such kind of body again in the future. It is said by great Master Shantideva. So the obtaining of the precious human body is something very difficult. So therefore, once you have obtained it, it is very wise to use it in an appropriate way. So it is to say that once we have obtained this precious body, we should really engage in the practices of the virtues practices, or we should engage in the Dharma practices. So we should not be indulging in laziness. In other words, we should not be lazy. We should try to actually use these particular opportunities to practice the virtues. So therefore, it is said in this particular teaching that one is not able to obtain this kind of precious human body again in the future. This precious human body, which is difficult to obtain, so nevertheless, this precious human body will be caused by any forms of impermanence, so it is easy to be destroyed. So the three spheres has the nature of being everything impermanence. It is like water running from a very high mountain continuously without any interruption. So it is to say that actually the water, which is waterfall, which is falling from a high mountain, will rain down without any interruption. So this has a situation that actually sometimes this runs out and sometimes it stops. This is not the case. So similarly, for example, this is the example that our life force will be exhausting, or but basically it is exhausting without any interruption. It's continuously exhausting.
so the Tenga Rinpoche sana, Bardos Kalayo, then Jipikan from home.
So therefore, once the impermanence occurs in our life, so there will be so much fears, especially if the person is being in the state of Bardos, the intermediate state. Once you are in this situation, without any choice, we need to follow the cause and effect. So if we have engaged in the virtuous actions in this lifetime, being a very kind person, being a very beneficial for other sentient beings, even if one is being in the state of Bardos, the intermediate states, we will have the feeling that actually we are overjoyed, we will be very happy while being in the state of Bardos. So if we have engaged in the unvirtuous actions or negative actions, harming other sentient beings, killing other sentient beings, engaging in any forms of negative karma, definitely while one is being in the state of other, the intermediate states, we will have the feeling that one is being always sort of like frightened, and we have so much fear in the state of Bardos. So in the quotation, what it says is that actually, so whatever we have accumulated, the negative actions through this body, if we don't do anything about it, this negative karma will not be exhausted by itself. So it is to say that actually in this lifetime, if we engage in any forms of negative action, definitely the habitual tendencies of engaging in the negative karma will remain in our mind stream. And if we don't do anything about it, so this will be within ourselves. So in order to purify our negative karmas, then it can be purified through relying on the 4 special antidotes. So if we doesn't rely on these 4 antidotes, whatever negative karmas we have accumulated will be within ourselves. So if we don't, let's say, apply a special method, then the negative karma will not exhaust by itself, will not be purified by itself. So then just a matter of time, when the karma ripens, so then we will have so much unfavorable situations like having so much physical sicknesses and mental problems.
And Department gave a driver thing, then Javala called me, so on. They ended, then Ridu Kana Jana, they don't mark Rongima to Yomara, Yavala, Josi, Yazala, Tekong, and Controller, what is I don't know, not on the check and 90 don't say or how my top secret don't I or Lara, Jumbo don't have it. Tongi don't have a long income.
So that the negative actions will bring the result. So the result, which is the disadvantages of samsara, which is the 4th mind training away from the samsara. So no matter which realms you might be born, nature of this realm is the suffering itself. For example, if one is born in the hell state, there will be so much suffering of hot and cold. If one is being born as animals, one will be tortured and punished. And if one is being born as human beings, then we will have the sufferings of birth, sufferings of old age, sufferings of sickness, sufferings of death. If one is being born in the demigod, there will be so much fightings and so much sufferings of fighting each other. So if one is being born in the God realm, so there will be the suffering as well as the transferring or falling into the lower existence. So no matter which realms you are born, so this realm has the nature of full of sufferings. So in my English translation, I forgot about hungry ghost. Maybe we don't like it at all. So we as Dharma practitioners, definitely we have a very strong wish to engage in the practice of Dharma. Our interest is there, but somehow due to our laziness, somehow we are always distracted. So somehow we are not really able to enter the practice itself. So in order to get rid of this kind of habitual tendencies, then the practice of the 4 points which helps us to turn mind away from samsara will be very beneficial and will help us to engage in the Dharma practice very diligently. So how to engage in the practice as known as the 4 points which helps us to turn our mind away from samsara? Actually, how to do about it, how to go about it. The first part is the reflecting on the real meaning of the precious human body. We should understand that this body is something very difficult to obtain. So once we have obtained, we should use this opportunity to practice the Holy Dharma. We should engage in the practice of Dharma. So then what happens is that once we don't use it, this particular opportunity, then the impermanence will occur, which is the second point. So even if we have obtained this precious human body, this will be destroyed. In other words, actually we will die, it's just a matter of time. So we should remind ourselves that we have this precious human body, so therefore we should engage in the practice. This is reflecting on the meaning of the impermanence. So what happens once the death occurs? Definitely we need to follow the cause and effect. Especially we will be in the state of Bardos. So once we are there, so without any particular choice, we have to follow our cause and effect. So therefore we should remind ourselves in this lifetime, we should try to abandon all forms of negative karma, or negative actions. We should try to avoid both the intention of harming others as well as harming others. So then the fourth point, which is the disadvantages of being in samsara. So while we have this precious human body, we should remind ourselves, we should urge ourselves to achieve this state of Buddhahood. Because no matter where you will be, the nature of this state is the suffering. So if we reflect on these special 4 points, this will be something very beneficial for us to engage in the practice of Dharma. It will be very beneficial to reflect on the meanings of these 4 points. So this is the first point of the Mahamudra, which is the preliminary practices. So the second point of the Mahamudra practice is the engaging in the practice of Guruyoga, the Langananja. Again, it is said by Devachenprayer that Lama's body is the body of the 4 kayas, and these 4 kayas will produce the streams of the blessings as if the snow mountain is being actually shined by sun. Then through this we are able to receive the blessings of the Lama. So it is to say that actually the Lama's body is used as an example, like a mountain which is full of snow. And if the snow is shined by a very strong sun, so definitely the snow mountain will produce the streams of water or river. And this river is being only produced if we engage in the supplication prayers to Guru, which is like the sun itself. So through this supplication, it is possible for us to have all forms of meditational experiences, like the practice of Mahamudra, and through their blessings we are able to recognize our very nature of mind.
무조건은 대자고 되는 양은 근데 많이 봐만 연바 여러 아마 잘 아마 소소 다 대봐 대여들 때는 연주민 용다랑 양의 시구나 요말 소소 말 잘을 아마 저랑 공제를 소환된 어떤지 지난주요.
So as for the Guru Yoga practice, which has composed a very concise Guru Yoga practice by supplicating to the 17th His Holiness Karmapa, those who wish to engage in this kind of practice, which is going to give a oral transmission, the loom, as well as the short instructions. So of course, engaging in this kind of practice of the Guru Yoga practice is very much depends on the individual interests, because maybe some of you might have His Holiness Karmapa as root guru, then this kind of practice is appropriate. And some of you might have different root gurus, then you should do according to your interests. So it is to say that no matter which Guru Yoga practice you are going to engage in, it's the same procedure. You will be visualizing your root guru on top of your head, and one will be supplicating to your guru and receiving of the 4 empowerments. So to engage in the actual practice of Guru Yoga, first we should visualize on top of our head the 1000-petal lotus having sun disk and moon disk. On this seat sits Guru Vajradhara, who has the essence of the 17th His Holiness Karmapa Ugintile Doji. And the Vajradhara appears in the form of a blue in color, having 1 face and 2 arms, at the crossing at the heart level, and the legs are in Vajra position. So basically, this particular form of Lama is the embodiment of all the Lamas. For example, if you have received empowerments, instructions, and whatever Dharmic connections you have made with different teachers from different schools, for example, teachers from Satyavata tradition, or Gelugpa tradition, Nyingma tradition, or Kajigpa tradition. So basically we have to think that the Lama in the form of Vajradhara, which we have visualized on top of our head, is the embodiment of all of them. So having visualized such a form, then we should supplicate one pointed to grant the blessings of the Mahamudra.
추종경에서는 마하카라도 마하카리 라서 그 추종을 좀 뭐뭐지 여러와 이 추종 통지제 주주에서도 잘라만 요요서 저는 전에 남아게 물들 살도서.
So secondly, we are supplicating to the Guru, who is the embodiment of all forms of yidams. When we talk about yidams, then we are referring to different aspects of yidams, such as chakra samvara, vajrayogini, cherasik, vaitara, etc. So one is requesting them to grant the accomplishments of the ordinary and extraordinary accomplishments. And thirdly, one is supplicating to the root Guru, who is the embodiment of all the Dharma protectors like Mahakala, Mahakali and others. And also at the same time, one is requesting them to grant the blessings out of their four activities.
Lama Yazan Shantideva, Benny Yin Norota, Jiggy, two Jigga, Sergeant Tembuke, Gumbato, Tobatin, Narana, Nansando, Penny, Naram Mesenda, Songi Jagom, Tobat, so at then Lana come up again, Tokeda, Naram, Sen, Yemi Jagan Jason, they come up and come up this song.
So then finally, the Lama, who is the embodiment of all, is referring to the embodiment of all the Lamas, all the Idams, all the Dharma protectors, like the wish-fulfilling jewel. One is requesting, or one should supplicate to the Guru to transfer the realizations of the Mahamudra, as well as the mind streams of the Lama, into my own mind streams, so that I achieve the Buddhahood in this very lifetime. So, after this supplication, then we should repeat the mantra of Kamapa, Kamapa Kino. So at that time, basically, one should imagine that actually Lama's mind and the mind of yourself become inseparable in union. With this attitude, then we should repeat the mantra Kamapa Kino.
Lama kama be tawa ne be se kago aram tawa tembe koye sala damba ne be se marbo aram damba la tembe songa sala kama be tuga ne be se tinga aram hinga la tembe tuja sala ne so ne be se kama te so aram ne so saje tembe mudu toso sa then lama be yoro sai Lama
So after this, then we need to take the four empowerments. So four empowerments can be practiced through the visualization. For example, from the forehead of Kamapa, white light radiates and streams into our own forehead. At that time, we are receiving the blessings of his body. And from his throat, white light radiates and streams into our own throat as for the speech blessing. And from his heart, the blue light radiates and streams into our own heart. We receive the blessings of his mind. And finally, from the forehead, the white light, from the throat, red light, and from the heart, the blue light radiates simultaneously at the same time and dissolves into our three respective places. So then finally the Lama dissolves into light, and light dissolves into oneself. We become inseparable in union with the Lama. So with this attitude, then whatever merits you have accumulated, whatever merit you may have accumulated, we should dedicate for the benefit of all sentient beings in order to obtain the four kayas. Which is yesterday, we are getting late for our lunch, so therefore we are going to dedicate our merits for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Thank you.